I'm Bishop Thomas Miller, an auxiliary bishop in the Liberal Catholic Church. I'm a member of the parish of St. Gabriel and All Angels in Fairfield, Iowa. The Liberal Catholic Church offers a form of healing known as Holy Unction. Holy Unction begins with a purification in the name of the Blessed Trinity and an invocation of the Holy Archangel Raphael. This is followed by the anointing of the individual soul centers or chakras with blessed oil. Then follows the laying on of hands and an invocation of the healing power of Christ. The service is performed by a priest or bishop in a reverent and worshipful setting. The healing service is powerful and moving, and at the same time dignified, welcoming, and comfortable for newcomers. Our parish held a special healing service recently. Following this particular Holy Unction service, Richard Trice, a local artist who is a member of the congregation, reported some remarkable experiences. His expressions were filled with a combination of wisdom, innocence, and the language of the mystics. My wife Donna and I interviewed Richard about his experiences.
I think the first thing to mention is that this experience that I'm sharing came in the context, in the flow of many years of participating with Holy Eucharist. And as all experiences are, they are part of a movement, a graduation, and then a step into another place. So this experience, although it was a defining moment, it was also a progression. It was a process. It was within a process and could only have occurred within that process. Could not have occurred by itself, as nothing does. It occurred within the process of worship, which I have been graced to participate in here at the Liberal Catholic Church. And I feel that worship is essential for connection to that part of ourselves which is divine, which goes on, which doesn't die. During the Eucharist, which preceded the Holy Unction, I was filled with a lot of joy, which happens consistently. But there was also something a little bit more. There was a greater sense of transparency, I would call it, or something more lucid, something more liquid, almost moving, more delightful in some way. And it was felt in my body as movement and energy. And as the normal Eucharist proceeded, it built more and more and began to fill my physical sense of body. So I'm going to be sharing this from both a emotional or a spiritual perspective and also from a physical, because there was a definite physical movement, which was what was so striking to me. I normally enjoy worship, but this had very tangible, it very much felt within my body and also in my spirit. So as Eucharist was finishing, I just sat there and waited, and there was this sense of waiting for some dearest relative to come into the room. The priest came in, Bishop Thomas came in and began the Holy Unction. And what struck me immediately was there was more of a form. You know, a form of worship is created through the Eucharist, but there seemed to be a greater dimension of structure of some kind. There were 3 priests and 1 bishop. 3 and 1. Interesting combination. in any event, the priests were doing the Holy Unction, and people were going up, and I stood in line. And Bishop Thomas was standing there with his staff, whatever that.
Called the crozier.
The crozier, that extremely profound-looking piece of equipment, as we would say. Very profound-looking. I never really understood exactly its significance until that day. But in any event, so he was going around and putting that on people's heads at the conclusion of their individual blessing. Now, as I stood up to go, a wave, it was as if this wave, like when you're at the beach and you begin to approach the ocean and you hear the waves, the tide, and that was as if there was this coming into my attention of this wave that was pouring towards me. And as I walked forward, it kind of fell over me, and I went into some greater place of joy, I would call it, just joyfulness. And again, there was more luminosity. It seemed as if things were physical, but also not physical. So I went up and I kneeled down and was given the blessing with the oil. The priests put their hands on my head. Now, during that, there was something very physical. When the hands came on my head, I became aware of my body in this definite sense of energy and light moving up and down through my body. And as that was going on, it was very clear to me that my head, this was a physical, my head started opening and my mouth fell open. Like that. And I couldn't close it. It was as if I was breathing in something very slowly. And then Bishop Thomas came and put his crozier staff on my head, crown of my head. And when that happened, it was as if the inside of my head expanded in my awareness and it became vast and empty. There was this vastness to the inside of my being and inside my body. And it was as if I was attempting to inhale that vastness. It was so wide. Occasionally a little thought would go through and disappear. And I kept sensing relief, such complete relief at some letting go of some holding on to something I'd been holding on to for a long, long time. A sense of relief and a sense of communion with something which was so vast, so completely eternal, which I was within, and yet was filling me, was within me. As if my body was this cavern full of stalactites and all kinds of stuff, and now all these stalactites were being removed, and there was nothing but this space and light within this space, and some quality of sound, some vibration which I couldn't hear with my ears, but some vibration, but yet a sense of relief at connecting and at being connected with. This mutual back and forthness was a part of this sense of relief. And it was why I was so astounded. There was a part of my small ego still present that was astounded, so astounded that I couldn't close my mouth. Like a picture you see in a movie when somebody's astounded. And I'm like this. And I walk back to the pew and I sit down, and my mouth, my head, my brain, my skull, my body is like hollowing out, becoming both empty and full, as if there's nothing that's small in there anymore. It's just all vast. And of course, I'm tearing over and just, there's emotions, but this sense of the smallness of little thoughts, and the sense that good thoughts, bad thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts, they're just thoughts. I have a bad thought about somebody, it doesn't matter, it's just like a good thought, because it's just some itsy bitsy tiny little thing floating through this vast, vast arena, which is that divinity, which is within me physically, right inside my bones, like hollowing out my bones and hollowing out my brain and hollowing out all the little cells. So I'm sitting there, this is just going on, and this sense of deliverance from connecting with the small things was so joyful and so relieving, such a relief. No longer do I need to be in touch with that which is small. So that was the relief. And there was also this total joyfulness of the communion of that divinity with my relief. So I just sat there and wept a little and sat, and it took a while before I could close my mouth. I just sat like that. 4, 5, 6, 8 minutes, whatever the time was. I closed my mouth and people were finishing and more people were going. And I looked up and I saw that bishop putting his on people's heads. And there was this very slow liquid movement of everyone. And there was this transparent dance everybody was moving through, almost as if we were all in this liquid soap that had bubbles and light. And then I closed my eyes and I just felt that within me. And it all began to settle down. And when I opened my eyes, gradually everything took back to a normal kind of shape, and people were moving about, and there were kids, and I closed my eyes again. But still within me, there was this vastness, this connection with something which I would only call eternal, and which was living. It was palpably alive. It had some connect. It almost had a yearning for me, yearning for it. This mutual yearning for one another, of divinity yearning for me and me yearning for that, and that being the thread of connecting into that vastness, that back and forth yearning for creation and for creator, and being within that. There was this joyful yearning. There's something about that relationship in there. So to make a long story short, then I went home. And I drove my car into the garage. And I'm just going to mention this because I turned on the radio and some music came on, some song. The song was a rock and roll song, something. It was so beautiful. I don't normally sit and listen to music, but I was completely embellished with the music. It was so full, and the bass and the guitar and the voices and all. I'm just sitting there going, wow, that's the greatest song I've ever heard. And I just sat in my garage listening to this music. And then I went, no, wait a minute, I have things to do. So I got up and went about, and all throughout the day, there was this sense that I was participating in things, but I was connecting with something, connecting. And my only other comment is, to move through this, is that sleep, or should I say, the movie of sleep, for the next 2 nights, I call it a movie because I was very much aware within the sleep of all kinds of scenes and people. I was watching, definitely what we call within the esoteric community, it was very clearly witnessing. I was watching, but I was not just removed from, I was participating and watching myself participate within my dreams. And my dreams were both dreams and remembrances, as if there were memories feeding back to childhood, and the memories were explaining in some way how I had gotten to where I am today in who I am. The memories had relationships to them that were not in time. They were memories connected by some other form of relating. The memory related to some significance of some other episode within my history or my memory, which was providing understanding to me about my life and how I've come to be here in Fairfield, doing what I'm doing, having gone through the relationships that I've gone through, how it is that I've gone through these relationships, why I've come to the conclusions that I've come to. This sequence of these memories of situations throughout my life and how that brought me to where I am and who my personality is began to become more obvious to me during Sunday and Monday's dreaming, as if I was being taught something about how I had come to this life and why I was here and who my personality, my individual personality is. And that began to pass towards the end of the week. I still have more lucid sleep, but it's not so, hey, listen to me. It's not so like, you gotta, it's like, okay, go to bed, now get some sleep, you got stuff to do. It's not like, okay, we gotta give you some information, you gotta listen, be aware, we're gonna get you to witnessing, we're gonna get you to listen to all this stuff. So here it is. The next 8 hours, we're gonna feed all this loop of all this stuff that you've been through since you were 4 or 5, and you're gonna get it, what you're doing here. Okay, so that went on Sunday and Monday night. And then Tuesday came and it started, and now it's more just, I've definitely noticed I'm not so caught up in things. I'm much more available. There's a joyfulness. I sense really why I'm here. And I have more of this connection to that, what I call divine or eternal. And within the context of me sharing this experience, that has been growing. So this experience is a part of that growth, that which has been going on for quite a while and has been more enriched from the process of worship that I've been able to participate in here with Holy Eucharist. That has been growing and growing. And this experience is a fruition and a movement forward of that which has already been happening. So that connection feels more palpable to me now, and I feel much more relieved. And I go for walks now in the woods like I always have, and there is definitely a greater sense of honoring the reality. That's it. So the bottom line of all this is honoring the reality of the fact that we are all divine. We're connected to that divinity. We're here to stay connected to that divinity. And by being connected to that divinity, we can better become an individual. We can't become an individual without being connected to that which is eternal. They go hand in hand. We think we have to cut loose from all the religious and all the worship in order to become a person. It's the other way around. We have to be fully connected to divinity in order to fully become an individual person. And that's really what I've gained from my participation here with these exquisite people who I'm sitting with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
I have one comment, two comments I'd like to make. One is I loved that point that you made about the simultaneous yearning, that God is yearning for us and we are yearning for God, and that
Right.
circular yearning keeps the motion going.
Exactly.
However you expressed it, it was so beautiful. I loved that,
Right.
that point. And also what I appreciated so much was your careful thoughtfulness in expressing your experience really authentically and honestly and clearly. So that was very, very inspiring, and also just gives such a wonderful perspective, like you said, on what we are doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, what we're doing here, you know, I think that's really what it's about. We're not here for that long a period of time. So what are we doing here while we're here?
Yes. Well put.
You know, we have to stay connected to that out of which we've come and that back into which we're going.
I'm still kind of stunned beautifully to my heart. Your expressions and experience have a uniqueness and a depth that is, they transmit some of what you experience to others, I feel. And this is what has been called, not that it needs a category, but mystical experience, genuine mystical experience, where the communication with the divine, knowing that the divine is knowing you, and the whole cycle you described, which I don't want to try to recast in any way. It's just wonderful, wonderful that you had that experience, and wonderful that you shared it. I'm going to be quiet for a little now. You and Donna may have something else to say, but I need to breathe a little bit because we've experienced something quite significant in hearing your deep and thoughtful and heartful telling of your experience.
My only other comment is, although this is mystic It's available to every one of us.
Also, as you said, even though this was your own evolution, a very personal part of your soul, you had been availing yourself of a very old version of the Holy Eucharist, which carries spiritual power, and that helped you to reach the point where at this special service, which had more pieces to it, wonderful pieces, and then a large number of people worshiping together and experiencing that together. And there were so many people who mentioned really wonderful experiences there. So we were in that together, a wonderful sharing of God and God giving of God's love back to the group. So those elements help us.
That's why I wanted to contextualize this as within a process.
Yes.
This experience comes within a sequence of many Sundays of participating within this group, worshiping divinity together, making this palpable communion, and being a part of that, enriching my capacity to be within that creation and within that community individually.
Yes.
So there is individuation, there's group, and then there's that vast eternity. And you're right, I spend lots of time in the woods. I get a lot of my images that I use in my art in the forest. But I have found, since I have been consistently going to Sunday Eucharist, what I see, what I'm able to make with my art has grown. The word grown is such a small word. Has developed so much more. It's light years ahead of when I was simply walking around in the forest by myself. There is a tangibleness of divinity in nature that I perceive more now from participating in worship with the sacraments.
And I would like to say, as an artist myself, I would bear witness to what Richard was just saying about his art, because I've known his art for quite a long time and have seen the gradual but very steady, I guess the only word I could use is magic, that comes out, magic in the sense of just what he's been talking about for all this time, the connection between the eternal and the temporal, human, the divine, nature, and all of us. That connectedness comes out in his art pieces, which are very beautiful, impossible to just describe verbally. But perhaps we can share those art pieces with those of you who are hearing this as well, so that that you can bear witness to it as well. But I've seen that expression, and I think that it's a wonderful thing for anyone who has inner experiences like this to give of them to the world in some form. Poets do that, artists do it, musicians do it,
Right.
All sorts of people do it in various ways. So it makes tangible in some form something that is difficult to actually describe in a form, but you get a taste of it. And that's what happens with Richard's art.
One is called upon as an artist to share. And when divinity or the eternalness begins to connect more with one, then one has a responsibility. well, now that you see me in the woods and you see me at church, what are you going to do with that? Come on, show me, paint me, make some pictures of me and move it around so that this glory that I am revealing can be seen. You're my hands now, you're my eyes, so come on, get with it, go out, make this art, don't sit around, you don't have time, you've got to make these photos and pictures. And that's kind of, it's playful, but that's really what I get, like, oh, well, I need to, gee, what am I going to, well, this has got to, so yes, exactly. What is called upon to share. And we use this word in Sunday, we say glorify. And lately I'm getting, oh, that's what it means. We are supposed to glorify this creation in which we are a part of. We're supposed to glorify it. And how do we do that? Well, we all have our individual ways of glorifying it. So whatever your way is of glorifying it, please.
We had been thinking in preparation for this interview that, we would ask you questions based on what you said. I have no questions. I feel like your expressions were so full and complete that I can't even think of a question to ask you for anything more. So,
not having any questions. This is good. So there's this vastness.
It feels like a wholeness. Yeah.